Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Unexpected Points. We're going to wrap up all of week 17, including an interesting, you could say, Monday Night Football matchup between the Browns and the Steelers. We're also going to touch on a bit all of the adjusted scores, things that happened and narratives out there that may be against what we believe really happened in these games. Let's get to it. All right, Ben, welcome back. For those watching, I commented earlier. Now you're in a new location. You're being shuttled around, I think.
Right. They're keeping me on my toes, right? I mean,
it's like CIA black sites, basically. Right. I think is what's going on at this point. So good to see. I am back, as you can see here in the splendor of my studio. So hopefully the mic sounds better. I have Sashi over my shoulder. Yes. He was probably not enjoying what he saw, looking down from above. RIP Sashi, looking down from above, what happened with the Browns last night. So we'll get into all of week 17. Let's go ahead and start with Monday Night Football, since that's the most recent thing. This is like taking your medicine here in podcasting form. Let's just take our medicine here. Let's get through that game and then move on to the rest of the week that mattered. So just to go over the parameters again for what we do here, we're going to give some background info, just mostly with whatever the spread was in this game, the betting spread, to get an idea of who was favored going into it, what was the actual score, and then what was my adjusted score, which accounts a little bit more for success rate versus downweighting outlier plays, which makes some adjustments for turnover-worthy plays versus actual turnovers, drops, special teams, it discounts, a bunch of things like that go into it. So for this Cleveland Pittsburgh game, the line looks like it closed at -1. It was -2 in some places for Pittsburgh, being the 1 or 2 point favorite. Of course, before the Bengals victory, which we will talk about second in the biggest game of the week, before that, there was not only was Cleveland favored, they were 3.5 point favorite. Right. And that was actually one of my best bets, props to me, was to take the Steelers plus 3.5. I didn't even think about it at the time, but there really was like asymmetric risk that was in your favor here, being that it wouldn't have moved if the Chiefs won. The Chiefs closed as 3.5 point favorites, so it wasn't like they were enormous favorites, and you got a lot of closing line value here, although that hasn't been working out so hot for people this year. Final score 26-14 Pittsburgh. My adjusted score has it actually closer to about an even-ish sort of game, maybe 1 or 2 points towards Pittsburgh at about 18-16. So first off, I want you to admit whether or not, Ben, did you watch this entire game?
I watched it. I don't know if I can say that I watched it really closely in the second half, but I was definitely interested, at least, in Baker Mayfield going over 1.5 passing touchdowns, which he did for me. So I will definitely take that, but not a great performance from Baker in general. I do think the most interesting takeaway, kind of like you touched on a little bit, was the spread movement, right? Like you said, Cleveland got all the way out to a 3.5 point favorite. I think even day of the game, Pittsburgh at one point was a -3 favorite. And people kind of bought back into Cleveland, right? So there's this like weird dynamic of motivation and, big Ben having his last send-off game and all these other things that kind of worked for Pittsburgh, at least moving out to what I would consider as a significant number as a field goal differential. But all in all, it didn't matter from a Cleveland perspective. I have to give you props for backing the Steelers. I was definitely not on their side. I had some Cleveland +3. So I got the closing line value that apparently is going to be feeding my family here for the rest of the week, because it was nothing else really, came through from the Cleveland's perspective outside of Baker Mayfield's 1.5 passing touchdowns. But what did he have? Like -0.5 EPA per pass attempt. Obviously, one really, I would say, poor interception, and it's a disaster for Sashi.
He got back to being okay overall. As you mentioned, he got those 2 touchdowns later that ended up pumping him up. I mean, at one point, 1.5 completions looked like it was going to be difficult. He was 4 of 15. He was 4 of 15 at one point during this game. And I made a comment that when he was 4 of 15, he was still averaging way more yards per attempt than Ben Roethlisberger was, even though Ben Roethlisberger was completing more than 50% of his passes. I mean, Roethlisberger had 123 passing yards on 46 attempts. So 2.7 yards per attempt. And his air yards per completion were only 2.7 yards. So this was just barely trying to throw the ball down the field. I mean, he did throw it down the field a few times, but not close to completing any of those passes. Both of these guys graded in the 40s. It was ugly. Surprisingly, Najee Harris, who that first round draft pick paid off. We got owned. The nerds got owned on this one because they had one of their only couple of good running performances of the season. I think it's only the third time this season that Najee Harris has gone over 100 yards rushing. And in this game, he really made the difference. And of course, one of the differences between my adjusted score and the final score is the fact that he got that late touchdown, which ended up pushing it up a little bit higher here. Okay, so Browns were already out. We already knew that. I think some of the line movement may have been like, is Baker playing or not? What does that mean about Cleveland trying in this game?
Right.
I mean, you can look at the results now. It's pretty easy to say they probably should have sat Baker, but I think there is an issue with, like, if he wants to play and you force him to sit down, then that becomes a whole issue going forward. So, what do you think about Cleveland's decision here? Next week, Baker's talking about he doesn't know whether he's going to play or not. He's going to have to discuss it with his agent. I don't know if his agent has special medical training to discuss this with him. I would have been fine if they just like caved the entire season, honestly, even in these last two games. Especially next week, because no one has anything to play for.
Right, definitely. I do think, like, outside of Philadelphia last year, I do think the Browns are basically the one team that would not necessarily completely throw a game, but they're not going to necessarily try and win here in Week 18. But the Baker Mayfield experiment in Cleveland seems all but said and done now. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out. The rest of the team, like other people say all the time, 253, really solid unit. But I'm curious what you think they're actually going to do at the quarterback position here in the offseason, because it seems like they actually have to do something with Kevin Stefanski. Obviously, Case Keenum's not going to be necessarily the 1A guy heading into the training camp next year. So are they drafting somebody? Are they going to be involved in the trade market? I do think a lot of people think the quarterback market is going to be somewhat robust from a trading perspective here, at least heading into 2022 as well. But
yeah. I mean, I think they have to be involved in something. They have to be opportunistic. I think what I'm going to do, though, is maybe I'll leave a little bit for the Friday show. But I think I'm going to do on some of these Friday shows is wrap up teams that have been eliminated and kind of what are we looking at going forward, because you can already start thinking about some of these teams. Maybe this week I'll go right into the Browns, as that's the team that I'm most familiar with. So I mean, just as a preview of that, I mean, I think they have to be opportunistic, but at the same time, they have Baker on the 5th year option, 19 million locked in. You don't want to be rash in what you do either in this situation. That's weird. I was looking at his grading and his EPA ranks throughout his career, and it's basically just been up and down. He graded really well his rookie year. It went in the tank his second year. He graded pretty well last year, and now went back into the tank again. So he's going to be one of those guys where every other year you're going to say, oh, maybe he's the guy. And then every other year you're going to say, oh, we got to get rid of this guy.
Right.
So you shouldn't necessarily expect this performance that we saw this season as the baseline going forward. And at the same time, if he plays well in a season, you can't expect that to be the baseline going forward either. So I think for now, unless you have a great option of moving him, because if you're going to take on another contract with him on your roster at the same time, that could also be kind of a disaster. So I think being opportunistic is really the way to go here.
Right, definitely. I agree with you. I mean, they absolutely have to do something. I just realized too, Baker Mayfield took 9 sacks yesterday. It's just an egregiously poor performance from our perspective, for sure. It was
I mean, there's a little bit of the everyone's trying to get the last lifeboat here in the sinking ship. It's not quite like Hugh Jackson Sashi levels of finger pointing, but when Baker was, I mean, people are going to make a huge deal about this. I mean, I follow too many people who are like Browns Twitter people, because like the fan Twitter element just goes insane after all of these things and parsing post-game press conferences. So Baker, after the game, said specifically that maybe our rookie right tackle, because Conklin's out, rookie right tackle should have had more help, and that against TJ Watt. And it's like, whatever. I see, as from my perspective is, Baker shouldn't be throwing anyone under the bus, but at the same time, he's a competitor. He's going to say things. It's not a big deal. The big deal is you're losing, right? You're losing, you're underperforming your expectations. So I would think everyone needs to take a little step back. I'm definitely team Barry / Stefanski. So I'm not going to necessarily throw him under the bus. I think a lot of people are going to say, well, they should have run the ball more. Maybe you can, but I think the problem is, and it happened on both sides in this game, is having an extremely unsuccessful passing game makes it more difficult to run than you think. Because unless you literally every first and second down run the ball, then having an unsuccessful pass on first or second down precipitates getting into third down, which you almost always have to pass in unless it's very, very short. And then if you can't convert, then you don't get a chance to run again on first and second down the next time. And then you're having more drives where 2 out of 3 plays end up being passes than end up being runs. It's like you need like a baseline proficiency passing the ball to even be able to generate the run game, unless you're going to go, Patriots snowstorm action and just refuse to pass the ball at all. So that's part of it. But I was also looking through Baker's numbers. I mean, he was pressured 18 times and he took 9 sacks. So you can't take a sack on half of your pressures. And all but one of the sacks came with a time to sack of 2.5 or more seconds. There were some that were 4. We're pretty generous on how we grade quarterbacks as far as not giving them credit for sacks, but we do have a stat that's called the sack is on the quarterback. And we gave 4 out of 9 of those to Baker. So that's a high proportion. We normally only grade quarterbacks negatively on something like 25% of sacks. So here was closer to 50% of sacks that we graded negatively on Baker. So a lot on Baker here. Maybe some is on Stefanski too. I'm not going to absolve him of responsibility, but I think generally, a deep breath, a difficult season, a Bengals team that emerged this year, all these things happened at once, and it compiled to make it a tough year for the Browns.
Right. I mean, you basically summed it up really well. Obviously they have a lot of pieces in place, but until, and we say this all the time, but until they figure out the quarterback position, I don't see them competing for even a division crown, much less, getting to the Super Bowl out of the AFC with just everybody else that they have. Are going to have to beat here coming up over the next couple of years. So obviously I have to get the quarterback position right. I don't see any clear answers here right now, but I do think if there's any organization that is going to figure it out, I do think it's going to be the Cleveland Browns. So we'll see what things happen.
It's interesting. Maybe I'm just not following Ravens Twitter in the same sort of way, but that, that's another team that's gone through a pretty big meltdown here, but I'm not really feeling a lot of pressure. Obviously, a lot more injuries played into that situation than it did for the Browns. Okay, before we get into the week, and we're going to start with the KC Cincinnati matchup, the biggest matchup of the week. But before we get into that, I just want to quickly mention that the promo code UNEXPECTED, show love for the pod, plus get 25% off any PFF subscription. This is the best promo code, the best offer you're going to get out there right now. Get all of our locked article content. We have a lot of stuff coming up on free agency, on the draft. Obviously, the draft guide is going to be a huge thing going forward. We're going to put together, I think we do better work on the draft than anyone else. Modestly, I'll say that, than anyone else out there. I'm going to have a lot of pieces I'm going to put out on modeling different positions, not only from a fantasy football perspective, but also from a quote unquote real football perspective. All that'll be available for you. 25% off, promo code UNEXPECTED. Okay, let's get into, like I said, the biggest game of the week. This is a game that I did watch. The entire thing. I even rewatched it, especially the final sequence I rewatched because there's some galaxy brain theories going on out there about them. Did they try to score? Did they not try to score? I mean, I think they tried to score. And, what's his name? Zach Taylor gave no indication in the post-game press conference that they weren't trying to score. He was like, well, we couldn't get in and this and that. So, it's funny how it's like, it's a little bit of this like, you never assigned to malice, which could be explained through
incompetence or whatever.
Incompetence. It's kind of like that. Like don't give these guys coaches too much credit on like galaxy braining some great strategy here at the end of the game. But anyway, let's get the particulars out of the way first. So Kansas City closed as a 3.5 point favorite. Again, I'm just racking them up here, the W's here, because we got that as a best bet at +5, although Cincinnati won 34-31. My adjusted score, and this is one of the two scores that's quite a bit different than the final score. My adjusted score actually has Kansas City being 28-23. So it wasn't the best bet there, according to my adjusted score. but we take our W's any way that we can get them here. And I'll preface this discussion because I know there's probably going to be some Bengals fans who are soaking it in this week. And maybe they're on YouTube, they're clicking straight to, they want to hear every piece of content that they can get on this Bengals Chiefs matchup because they're hearing a lot of good things. Joe Burrow's, top 5 quarterback, MVP candidate, everything else is going out there. So I will preface this conversation with saying that, I told Bengals fans to be humble a number of weeks ago. I think it was 6-7 weeks ago when they were kind of, they were smelling, they're smelling the roses, everything that was going on at that point earlier on in the season. Then I flipped around when they lost 4 of 6 to try to pump them up with the fact that they had all these young players here. So, as is my brand, this may not be the most enjoyable experience to listen to me talk about this game from the Bengals perspective, only because we're trying to combat the narratives and put a realistic spin on what happened here. Right. So I do have KC as being a little bit better in this game. What did you think of this just overall? How much are you buying of the Bengals as being a real top tier team and a playoff potential Super Bowl type of team right now?
Right. So I think, probably even heading into this season, I was high on the Bengals, to say the least. I did write them up, to win the AFC.
Only North a 6.5 win total.
Right, 6.5 win total. So they obviously exceeded that. Really low expectations. I thought they were a dark horse candidate to win the AFC North. I wrote that up in an article basically last February. So I like the Bengals heading into the season. I think right now I do want to pump the brakes on them being a legitimate contender in the AFC. Obviously, this was a signature win for them, but this continued to be the way in which they win. And maybe this is their brand now, and maybe this is sustainable, but the big play shots to Jamar Chase, consistently winning battles where, in one-on-one coverage where it does seem like the cornerback is there, right? And then at the very last second, Jamar Chase is able to kind of separate, make a big play downfield, and get them. That is basically what their almost entire offense has devolved into, especially in this matchup. Obviously, Jamar Chase had 3 touchdowns, 2 really big plays. Daniel Sorensen, one time got really burned badly. Another time, Jamar Chase basically looked like, was surrounded by 3 defenders and somehow ended up breaking free and scoring a 76-yard touchdown, I think is, how long that one was. So it seems like somewhat unsustainable the way in which their offense functions defensively. I don't think they're, 100% there. I don't think this was so much a win from the Bengals perspective as much as it was a loss from Kansas City. 3 points in the second half. I do think Kansas City was essentially dominating the game in the first half, made some questionable decisions, especially down the stretch. And I do think that outside of, 2 turnover-worthy plays that I think Patrick Mahomes had, he was the better quarterback. Joe Burrow continues to kind of do these things where he, takes a lot of sacks under pressure. He had 4 today. Chris Jones was kind of taking over the game in the first half. Thankfully, he was able to kind of escape the pocket on a couple scrambles in the second half in order to extend drives. But if he takes sacks in those situations, essentially the game is over. But I think the Chiefs let this one slip away more so than the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals actually won it. So I'm not overly inclined to say that they are capable of competing with a team like the Chiefs or Bills here in the AFC playoff race once that's kind of happening. So that's my initial takeaway on it. I'm curious where you kind of evaluate their performance and how you actually see them, stacking up here in the AFC.
Yeah. Right, I mean, I think I'm gonna start positive. I'll start positive. Maybe I'll do
positive.
Maybe I'll do like you're supposed to do when you're managing, like the compliment sandwich, which is you compliment, you critique, and then you throw a compliment on the end. On the end. So I'll say that they are relying on the big plays. You mentioned that. Chase's 2 touchdowns, the blown coverage, I think by Sorensen. I don't really know. It looked like a pretty bad play by him on the second touchdown that he got and the first touchdown. Those are the 2 biggest positive plays by expected points of the 2,000 offensive plays that happened over the week. So very big plays there. They've been getting those consistently. They converted a 3rd and 27 also, which was a huge. I mean, it's about as big of a play as you can make. That's a non-touchdown type of conversion. So I think that's true, that they have that going on where, and we've seen Chase this season with the dominance early in the season, the disappearance kind of mid-season, and then now coming back and putting up 266 yards in this game. But I will say that on a week-by-week basis, I think it's easy to discount what they do. I mean, for instance, in this game, the Chiefs had a 58% success rate offensively, and the Bengals were only at 44%. So It was like a 97th percentile type of game for the Chiefs for their success, and only in less than, it wasn't even a 50th percentile type of game for the Bengals. And I think it's easy to discount that on a game by game basis, but they do clearly have players, especially Jamar Chase, that allow them to have a better chance at getting these explosive plays. It's just not going to happen necessarily that consistently. So when it comes to something like the playoffs, what I would say for them is they probably do have a fatter tail than some others do, as far as if they can stack, I don't know if they can stack 4, but if they can stack 2-3 of these really outlier high efficiency to lower success rate type of games like they had against the Chiefs, they can win games and they can beat anyone in those sorts of matchups. Can they stack 4 of them? I don't know. But I would also say like their median type of outcome of how many wins they'll have in the playoffs is probably lower than some people think. Like they have a better chance than some people think of being bounced out in week 1 where these things don't come together. They had huge plays on third down. And I also think the matchup with the Chiefs, I'm not getting too much into hashtag film here, but like the 3rd and 27, it's like you're gonna bring the house. I mean, I understand bringing the house if it's like 3rd and 11, but it seemed like there were some plays where they were trying to prevent them from getting into field goal range, but instead gave up the 3rd and 27 by singling up guys like Jamar Chase. I mean, if you look at this particular game too, it's not just the efficiency, but it was the fact they had so many yards after the catch, so many yards on contested catches. 361 of Burrow's 466 passing yards were either after the catch or on contested catches. So these are things that are going to happen sometimes when you have those types of players like Jamar Chase, but he's not always going to go 4 for 5 on contested catches for, 80 yards and multiple first downs. It's just not always going to happen. Sometimes he's going to go 1 for 5 on contested catches.
Right. I mean, going back to the 3rd and 27 play, obviously they were trying to keep them out of field goal range. It was not the correct call from Steve Signal, in my opinion. Of course, we don't want to get into hashtag, critiquing play calling situations, especially defensively, right? But overall, that was where the game was really lost for Kansas City. Obviously, they made some other poor decisions and things down the stretch, but I agree with you. And maybe, it's obviously been an outlier season for Jamar Chase in general, especially in that, contested catch, big play sort of separation capability that he has, but it still doesn't seem like it's actually going to be sustainable. And if that falls incorrectly at times during the playoff race, I just don't see the Bengals being good enough outside of him offensively or defensively to actually beat a team. So I think I definitely agree with you. I do think that their, median outcome is definitely a lot lower than people think. Of course, they have, some distributions where they do end up rattling off 4 straight games and getting really hot. And, Joe Burrow throws a bunch of deep, perfect passes to Jamar Chase, and they end up, kind of getting those explosive plays and having that be enough to beat some teams. But, and in the most likely of scenarios, I just don't think that's actually going to play out like that.
Okay, so again, let's get back to some positives here for the Bengals. So the one positive, a big positive that we've seen is I and others have been begging them to pass the ball more often, despite the fact that Burrow's taking a lot of sacks. So what we have seen is they're a team that was under expectation as far as their drop back rate this entire season. Yet the last 2 games, they dropped back 16% over expectation week 16, 13% over expectation week 17. So again, huge results for Burrow these last 2 weeks, and they're leaning into that, which I think is a very, very good thing for the playoffs. Jamar Chase, we talked about the 266 yards. Now he's leading rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year odds where he was back before. I'm like very, very much on Chase. I was kind of on Chase even before this explosion because I like rewarding, especially in a award that doesn't specifically call out value. I like rewarding superstar talent over like a
median outcome or something.
Yeah, over someone who's playing like an average quarterback, like Mac Jones, you could say is playing. So I'll say that for him here. But I do think we got to get into all the game management stuff. This is going to be our forte, the nerd talk here. So first thing I want to mention is Andy Reid. And the one, this is like maybe it's a minor thing, but first drive of the game, 4th and 1, they're on their own. I don't know what it was, 30 something. This is a 3 and out. They decide to punt the ball there. This is about a 2.5%, 3% win probability loss, according to what the numbers are. But again, in the context of the game, you're playing another potentially explosive offense. The Chiefs only had 8 possessions in this game. So if you take that possession aside, so they give away this one possession, you only have 7 possessions left. On the rest of those 7 possessions, they went touchdown, 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 punt, field goal, punt, I think. Regardless, they only had 3 possessions in the second half, right? That's part of the reason they only scored 3 points in the second half. There was also a drop and penalty, which killed the 2 drives that they didn't score on. Even the field goal one, it was like maybe they could have gone for that in that one there, but not necessarily. That one was probably field goal was the right call. But again, just like giving away these possessions in these games, it is going to hurt you when you're playing it in another offense like that. So that's number 1. Taylor also punted on the first. Zach Taylor also punted on their first drive on a similar 4th and 1. But still, with Kansas City in particular, like they should definitely be going for this here. And number 2, and I think this is probably the most interesting, because that's like a no-brainer type of thing. Like near the end of the game, the more I'm looking to this, I'm getting more and more on the team that when the Bengals had the ball, they convert the 3rd and 1 from the 2-yard line, Kansas City's 2-yard line, tie game. They have it 1st and goal, less than a yard at that point. The 2-minute warning hits. Kansas City has 2 timeouts. I'm getting more and more on the side of the fact that they should have let the Bengals score. I agree that the way things played out and the fact that they were 1 illegal hands to the face away from potentially getting the ball back with a tie game makes it look like they made probably the right move. But I think when you weigh in a bunch of different factors here, like you have the certainty of getting the ball back, knowing that the other teams in these situations, according to the numbers that I crunched, the other teams in these situations, they score a touchdown 90% of the time when they have the ball near the goal line. They get a field goal another 5% of the time. And then the rest of the time, there's a fumble or there's a turnover or something else happens. So if you could say to yourself, this would be my rubric. If you could say to yourself, 2 minutes left, 2 timeouts, do we think we have a 10% chance of scoring a touchdown in this situation? If the answer is yes in that, then I would say go ahead and let them score, because they're going to score anyway. And if they score on 2nd or 3rd down, you're down timeouts in those situations. Or 4th down, you're down timeouts and extra time in those situations. And even if they score, even if you held them to a field goal, you're still losing 2 timeouts, and you're losing, and you'll be at like 50 something seconds left, and you'll need to score 3 points. So it's like 3 points with 50 something seconds left and no timeouts versus 7 points with 2 minutes left and 2 timeouts. I'm not sure you're in that much better of a situation, even if you hold them to a field goal. So if you really just are looking for a turnover on downs or something like that, I don't know. I feel like they should have just let them score in that situation, at least give Patrick Mahomes a chance.
Yeah, letting them score is definitely the correct play. Obviously, even with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, he didn't have the football basically the last 7 minutes of the game, and that's just an egregious situation from Andy Reid's perspective. I think they absolutely need to let them score as soon as they got that first down to move it from 3rd and 1 to like 1st and goal at the 1-yard line. There's just not enough outcomes where you actually end up stopping them in any sort of thing. And even getting a field goal and stopping them and holding them to a field goal with 45 seconds left, I think is maybe even a worse situation than getting the ball back with 2 minutes left and 2 timeouts, which is what they would have had if they would have just let them score. So I don't think there's really any argument to say otherwise for why they actually shouldn't score. So I can't even disagree with you on that one.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where maybe 1st down, I don't know. It's one of those things like, okay, they're going to score 60% of the time on 1st down normally in these situations. So 60% of the time, you're going to be in the same exact situation that you would have been if you just let them score.
Right.
And then, so maybe you can use the knowledge on that 1st down as to see what happens as to what you want to do going forward. But I think it was a tough one. Now, Zach Taylor's decision to go for it on 4th down, I don't know. That one was a little bit more of a coin flip. I know that by the same philosophy that we're talking about, it would have been really rough if they kicked a field goal and then watched Mahomes drive all the way down the field and score a touchdown and win in regulation. Although I don't know how often a team is really going for the touchdown. If they only have, 45 seconds left and no timeouts, how often they're actually able to get the touchdown as opposed to kick a field goal in those situations, because you need to stop the clock, you need to spike the ball to get the field goal unit out there, all that sort of stuff. So I don't know if that was a realistic sort of thing. It's probably going to overtime, would have been the worst case scenario, kicking the field goal there. But what did you think about that fourth down call? Especially, again, we don't want to get into team play calling here, but I'm wondering about the pass in that situation. I mean, they did get the penalty, which they probably are not going to get on a run, but your chance of converting with a third of a yard, maybe in that circumstance, I don't care how many times you got stuffed in a row, you still got to be better running the ball or sneaking it or doing a Drew Brees over the top than it is just straight dropping back to pass and throwing it, right?
Right. I mean, so outside of the play calling situation, I actually do think going for it on fourth and goal is a decent decision, probably the right decision from my perspective, because the Chiefs can't do anything if they don't get that fourth down conversion, right? If the Chiefs get the ball back at the 1 yard line with 45 seconds left, they're not going to score either, right? They actually have to run probably one or two sneaks.
I'm not they have to run about that.
Well, they have to run one or two sneaks probably to get out of the goal line. That obviously is going to take up some time. I don't think you really want Patrick Mahomes dropping back there and potentially getting a safety or something like that as well.
Right? It depends on how conservative. You're right. Andy might be pretty conservative there. They might try to.
Yeah. So I think worst case scenario, if they don't convert there, it's going to overtime anyway. So I don't mind the decision, because I also think that, and this was something that Eric Eager brought up on the forecast, but it's basically getting that penalty is not something that people are factoring in. And once you get that penalty, the game is essentially over, right? You can run, 3 more plays, kneel down, do exactly what they did, kick the field goal as time expired. So the game is over if they get a penalty. The game is essentially over if they convert. And the worst case scenario is that they're going to overtime if they don't convert. So I don't mind them playing for the win basically on fourth down. I do think that was, from my perspective, probably the correct decision-making process.
Yeah. The only thing that I would say about and again with the pass call, right? I still think you're probably weighing what happened on the last 3 plays a little bit too heavily. But the second part about it is, if you look at the downside in that situation, like your chance of a turnover is higher, and if you turn the ball over in the end zone, all of a sudden Kansas City has the ball on the 20-yard line,
right?
Or if you take a sack, then all of a sudden Kansas City has the ball.
Like the 10-yard line,
on the 10-yard line, versus if you run the ball, you're assured to really pin them in. So that's another reason why I'm thinking, you were talking about just purely limiting downside, like running the ball would have been my preferred choice there, despite the fact that they had trouble in there. But again, they got the team play calling.
They got the penalty, and I was surprised too, because they had the offsetting holding penalties basically, and then they went back to almost the same exact passing play on fourth down again or something like that, which was I thought probably the more egregious decision. I do agree.
Well, they didn't even roll Burrow out too, which again I thought would be an interesting choice in that circumstance.
Especially
maybe you don't want to limit him to half of the field, but God, they had him sneaking.
Especially how often he was taking sacks basically under pressure. I was surprised that they didn't roll him out or getting him at least somewhat moving, because at least in that situation, then he could at least throw the football away. I know you don't want to see him throw the football away on fourth down, but going back to it and then pinning them down at the 1 yard line is not the worst of outcomes for the Cincinnati Bengals in the worst case scenario. So but I agree.
No, I can agree. I can agree with that. And plus, Andy Reid, he's probably gonna be a little more conservative. He's gonna say, let's take this to overtime and we'll win in overtime.
We got the better offense. Yeah, exactly.
Because we're the better offense. And then they just don't get the ball in overtime and give up a touchdown on the first play.
Exactly.
So okay, big picture implications here. We all know the Bengals win the division with the win. The Browns were out already. So the Chiefs now, they need the Titans to lose to the Texans, and then they need to beat the Broncos in Denver. So probably unlikely, probably not going to get the number 1 seed. All of that is lost here, but I still think, according to the betting odds, they have the best chance of winning the AFC, despite the fact that the Titans are pretty locked into the number 1 seed at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Titans are the worst number 1 seed we've had in quite some time, basically.
Titans fans are salty, though. Titans fans are salty, so they're gonna come after us. I'm gonna try to put a positive spin on the Titans again.
Don't do it.
Team that I trash all the time. Okay, let's get into some of these other games we can get through a little bit more quickly. Let's go ahead to Sunday Night Football. 12.5 point favorite were the Green Bay Packers. That line moved by a bunch. I don't know, 6-7 points, something like that, once Kirk Cousins bubble was bursted and
plexiglass, right?
Excuse me. Yeah, maybe he needed to double bubble, like double mask. Maybe if he double bubbled, that he would have been. Actually, I don't want to make too light of a situation. I hope he's feeling fine and everything there. Green Bay wins 37-10. My adjusted scored at 38-9, so pretty close to what the thing is done here. So the Packers clinch the bye. They're done as far as needing to do anything this season. Rodgers pretty much clinched the MVP. I think he doesn't really even need to play in week 18 to get that. My only question on this game is, and again, this is a game that I did not watch in closely. How did Sean Mannion end up with a 70, almost a 70 grade in this game? Because it was pretty ugly offensively.
Right. Yeah. -0.42 EPA per pass attempt. I mean, I think it was mainly the Garrett Bradbury play that kind of boosted.
Oh yeah. That was awesome.
Maybe because that was a nice, conversion for Sean Mannion. I would say probably the best offensive play. I'm not sure how he graded so well either. Maybe it was the fact that did he take what do you have 2 sacks basically? I don't know. I watched this game relatively closely. I did say on our podcast last week, Aaron Rodgers owns the Vikings. You should bet the Packers at -6.5. So if you did that, you got not only closing line value, you also got a winning ticket. So
then you went and infected Kirk Cousins right afterwards to get that done. So props to you on that one. The only thing that I want to mention here, and again, I want to be able to move past some of these games pretty quickly, is I feel like Davante Adams, even though most people probably say he's the best receiver in the NFL, or Kupp's in that discussion obviously now since he's the guy here, but I do think he's being slept on a little bit, because when I did these numbers for non-quarterback MVP, like his season last season was actually stronger than Kupp's season this season, according to my numbers for how much value that he was adding, but he missed a couple of games there. He missed a game this year. So if you look at his numbers for 2020 and 2021, I mean, he's first in receptions by a couple over Cooper Kupp, despite missing those 3 games. He's second in yards. He's only 30-something yards behind Justin Jefferson, despite missing 3 games. He's way ahead in touchdowns, first downs. He's 2.9 yards per route run, where I think Kupp's the second closest guy, where he's more like 2.6, 2.7. And then his drop rate is only 2% too. So he's one of the top guys there. So this has been one of the best 2-year stretch runs for Davante Adams, playing in an MVP offense. Just remember, this is like an MVP number 1 passing offense the last 2 years. And you look around and it's not quite that Will Smith meme of Fresh Prince where he's looking around, there's nobody there, but there's really not a whole lot in those skill positions for Aaron Rodgers to throw it to, really backing up an MVP campaign multiple years in a row.
Right. I mean, at the wide receiver position, especially, and they haven't gotten basically anything from the tight end position really either. So it's basically been Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon to a lesser extent, especially in the passing game. But
AJ Dillon's thighs, whatever their names.
AJ Dillon's thighs,
the Quadzilla and the Quadzilla and whatever the other Quad Master or whatever he calls them. Yeah. He has names for his thighs. I didn't name him. He had names.
You didn't name him? You didn't name him? No. I thought you were naming him right then or something. No. I have nothing more to say about the Vikings outside of the fact that they need to fire basically everybody and hopefully trade Kirk Cousins back to Washington or something. I don't know what's going to happen.
Is anyone trading for Kirk Cousins? I mean, isn't your best case scenario that you can just offload him? You're just trying to get rid of that contract. You're not getting anything for Kirk Cousins, right?
I
don't know. Maybe you will. I don't know.
I don't think you're going to get much, to be honest with you. Maybe the Steelers overpay or something. There are obviously some teams that are going to be in the market for a new quarterback, but yeah, they're not going to really get anything outside of dumping a salary, in my opinion. They just need to actually bottom out, do the rebuild properly, get down to the Detroit Lions level, hire somebody like Dan Campbell, and then we'll see what actually happens here in 5 years.
Yeah, maybe the Vikings are another team. Maybe I can bring you on to talk about the Vikings, what they need to do. Rebuilding is one of these teams. I have a feeling, though, someone's going to point out the fact that Kirk Cousins is 5th in PFF grading so far this season when you're trying to offload and be like, hey, can you get this? Look at this, 5th.
Right.
Come on, guys. Let's go for it. So we'll enter the conversation there. Okay, another game I think we can get through pretty quickly. The Falcons at the Buffalo Bills. Bills closed as 14-point favorites. Push City here, 29-15 Buffalo. My numbers had it 25-14, so a little bit more narrow. Ugly game-ish. Josh Allen had some upside, but he also had some of the downside, but the Bills get the job done. And if you're going to have a like a bingo score for what could possibly happen in this game, Matt Ryan, them closing out the game, basically ending their chances of winning this game because of a Matt Ryan taunting call on a rushing touchdown where he gets into a safety's face would have been one of the last things that I would have suspected ended up playing out of this game. But that's basically what ended up happening is Matty Ice got a little too pumped up here, and that pretty much closed the game for them here. You got anything to add about this one, or can we just kind of move on and say Buffalo, you're gonna have to play. Buffalo's gonna have to play a little bit better than what we saw.
I think Josh Allen's gonna have to play better, especially from a passing perspective, right? This was like the exact opposite of how we saw them play last year. Pretty heavily emphasis on the run, 0.3 EPA per rush attempt. I think they were definitely really poor from a passing perspective. I think Josh Allen, obviously 3 turnovers, the 1 pick six, negative 0.38 EPA per pass attempt. So, I mean, not the sustainable way that they're going to win football games here coming up in the playoffs. So I think maybe that's the only concerning takeaway. Yeah. But I don't know. I do think at points, Josh Allen kind of do a lot of things that not too many other quarterbacks do on the football field. So hopefully it gets back to that point, but there's definitely some regression trends happening for the Buffalo Bills in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that they got the running game going somewhat to have something. But again, that's just more like a talking point.
It's like a consolation prize,
than a reality for them. And I do think their defense, especially their pass defense, I mean, continues to prove on a week by week basis that they are pretty legit. And that is a difference in this team. This team seems to really genuinely be playing better on that side of the ball. Again, you come up against, the wrong week against Joe Burrow or against Patrick Mahomes or against Justin Herbert. Or against Ryan Tannehill, maybe.
Right.
Then maybe it doesn't really matter, but that's at least something they can hang their hat on a little bit. Okay, probably the least impactful game of the week, other than in its horror for Mike Glennon, was the Giants at the Chicago Bears. Bears close as 6.5-point favorites. They win 29-3. My adjusted score is actually 18-12, which is shocking. I don't know how I even got up to 12. I may have to check my systems on that one, but I had to keep Glennon off of like any of the illustrations, the graphs, the visualizations I put out this week, because he was so far he was breaking the scale for everything there. Negative 2.2 EPA per play, negative 10 net passing yards in this game. He had a 21 grade. So he was like 20 points lower in grade than anyone. And I think the lowest EPA per play was like 0.5 point, and he was 2.2 points EPA per play here. The worst game in EPA per play that we've seen over the last few years. And the second worst game was like half as bad. The worst grade that we've seen for years. The last thing I want to just mention before we move on here and get your words, you need to know if you have anything to add to this.
I have nothing to add.
Just, hey, the numbers speak, I'm just going to put these out here. When starting Andy Dalton and Nick Foles, the Bears are 4-2 this season. And when starting Justin Fields, they're 2-8. So, Matt Nagy, does he deserve a chance with the veteran quarterback? that's the question. Many people are thinking that. And wondering that after this performance. So just saying, just putting that out there to the Justin Fields apologists, something to chew on, something to think about at night. Okay, this was an impactful game, but I'm not sure I have a whole lot to say about it. And this is the Cardinals at America's team, Dallas Cowboys. Dallas closes as actually, I do have something to say about this. They closed as 6.5-point favorites. Arizona wins 25-22. And this was the biggest flip around. I actually had Dallas being better 28-16. So that's a huge differential there.
Wow.
Well, 53% success rate for Dallas, only a 39% success rate. They had a better EPA per play than the Cardinals, but the Cardinals had these absurd like fake helmet catch punt conversion that they had there. No turnovers for the Cardinals, and there was a lost fumble for Dak there. And the Cardinals averaged, or I should say, Kyler Murray was negative EPA per early down whenever he was passing, and then he had over 1 EPA per late down on his play versus negative on early downs. So it was really just converting these handful of plays that they really needed to convert there. At the same time, Dallas not being able to convert in those situations despite having this high success rate. So I'm not as down on Dak coming out of this. I've heard some people say that this was a little bit troubling for the fact that he didn't perform well again after a good game and a complete wipeout the week before. But, the prior weeks of that, he was struggling in bed. So maybe my only takeaway from this is, Dallas is out of that number 1 seed now. That dream is dead. But I don't think the offense was maybe as bad as some other people think after this game.
Right. Definitely. I don't think we need to bury Dallas in any sort of manner in this, from this matchup. I do agree with you. Basically, some outlier player, specifically from Kyler Murray. I don't think, the Cardinals are anything that's going to be all that scary kind of heading into the playoff picture for the NFC right now. But yeah, I'm not, I would like to see some more consistency from Dallas, but I'm not really quite sure if that's going to happen here. I do think that, their ceiling outcome is still potentially the best team in the NFC from my perspective. And I'm not changing that kind of based on this matchup here. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the defense is still playing pretty well. Again, like they held the Cardinals down to a low success rate. And sometimes Kyler's going to make those sort of plays. And that's all you can really hope for, is that you end up getting more, if you end up getting more of these big outlier plays, which I think they can produce on offense with the weapons that they have. No Michael Gallup anymore though. So that's something to adjust for. Although they've been, they got a lot more reps for these like tertiary and fourth, fifth type of option receivers this season because of injuries that they've had. I think those guys can be okay going forward. And, some ways it's good to have like a week where you can almost just rest up and get ready for the playoffs. You're not necessarily going to know your opponent, but I still think it's good to have that time ready to go. Let's hit another sponsor here. Manscaped is back. Probably part of the, it actually mentions New Year's resolutions. I was going to say part of the New Year's resolutions here. Cheers to 2022. Oh, this is all about resolutions, and resolutions you can actually keep. How about upgrading your grooming routine for the new year? Our sponsors at Manscaped are here to make the ball drop. Get it?
Whoa.
Testicles, ball, into 2022. The cleanest ever, the cleanest ball drop ever. Set your first New Year's resolutions with good intentions and join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. With our exclusive offer, go to manscaped.com and use code PFF for 20% off and free shipping. The Performance Package 4.0, the Lawnmower 4.0, electric trimmer is designed to trim hair on loose skin. Advanced skin-safe technology reduces cuts and nicks all over. It also comes equipped with a 4000K LED spotlight. This is also good in the emergency situations, during the winter, if you have a power outage, something like that, go ahead and grab your Lawnmower 4.0 and make your way out of harm's way there. Ultra premium body wash from Manscaped solves three in one. Save you some time and get you all shiny and cologne infused for the winter season. Get 20% off and free shipping with code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code PFF. It's new year, new me in 2022 with Manscaped. All right. Here we go. Manscaped. Okay, implications here. But again, a game that kind of two teams that no one really cares about, even though the Raiders keep on winning games. So the Raiders at the Colts win 23-20 despite being 8.5-point underdogs, and my numbers had it 21-13, so even a little bit wider than this here. And I have to say here, the thing happened is all Football Guy models just went up in flames in this one. And you knew when Adam Schefter sent out the tweet in the morning about the fact that the Colts were 9-0 when Jonathan Taylor hit 100 yards this season, you knew this was going to happen. Jonathan Taylor somehow, even though according to the models, football guy models, there was a 0% chance of this happening. Somehow 0% chance of this happening according to the 9-0 models. Jonathan Taylor got his 100 yards and they still lost the game here. So how is this possible? Can you help explain this to me as someone who believes that 100 yards means an automatic victory?
Yeah, I think it was because he only got 20 carries. I think if he gets like 22 or 23 carries, that's when the automatic win happens.
There's a secondary one. It's like one of those flow charts where did you get 100 yards? Yes. And then
does your quarterback still suck? Yeah.
Did you still lose? Did you the rule of 53 or 56 or it changes depending upon the results of the game or whatever that rule is. They probably didn't hit that one. They didn't hit that one, right?
Exactly. That was the main problem, of course. I mean, this seemed like it was kind of the quintessential Carson Wentz game, in my opinion. Obviously, he had some decent spots. The end of first half drive when they actually scored a touchdown, I thought was a really good drive from him. But outside of that, lucky touchdown to T.Y. Hilton bouncing.
Oh yeah, that was ridiculous. Hands. That was absolutely ridiculous.
So that was obviously like his one really really solid play from a passing perspective. He did have a couple throws once again on that touchdown drive. to end the first half, but then took the sack on 3rd and 6, basically to move them out of field goal range in the third quarter. A number of other really poor plays, 16-27, only 148 yards. And this was kind of the question for the Indianapolis Colts, going back to the football guy mentality and stuff like that. But it's like, if they get down early and they're not able to kind of just ride Jonathan Taylor, in the second half, can Carson Wentz actually bring them back? And it seemed like for the most part, I don't think he's going to actually be able to, especially in the playoffs. So I think it's maybe a little bit concerning from that perspective for the Colts as they head into the playoffs here, that we kind of know who Carson Wentz is right now, and he's not going to be something that really elevates this overall offense. And I think that's obviously going to be the detriment of the Indianapolis Colts here in 2021.
Yeah. It's like the Bengals thing to an even greater degree. It's like, can you stack 4 solid Carson Wentz performances? Because he did bring them back against the Cardinals, I would say. Like, there were a couple of scoring drives there in the second half that he was almost completely responsible for, that helped bring them back with a good defense. So they do have a defense that can perform well, a defense that can be opportunistic as far as takeaways are concerned there. I think there's some stickiness there, especially with Darius Leonard and the way that he forces fumbles. There's definitely something.
He had an interception too, right? I mean,
he did. Although he got juked. Was it him that got juked by Carr in the pocket in that last play where the throw to Renfro? Which is interesting about the Renfro thing too, is like, they're actually glad that he got touched, that he was down, because if he would have scored, like, the Colts could have had a chance to come back. So that was actually like an ideal circumstance for them, that he ended up getting touched on that last play, and they brought it back and they could kick the field goal at the end of the game. Carr had a 53% success rate versus 38. Neither guy graded that well, because Carr had 3 turnover-worthy plays, but he made that big play at the end of the game. And it's kind of interesting. Carr's like evolution, whereas kind of you want to get rid of him or you want to keep him. I think now he's kind of in like a building block type, where if they're hoping things will turn around, they're going to want to keep him. It's weird how his opinion on him can fluctuate up and down, despite the fact that his numbers are actually pretty even throughout. Like, he's not even a Baker Mayfield who jumps up and down. It's more like just the team performance seems to jump up and down depending upon what they're doing. And again, they're going to have a play in your end game, Sunday Night Football, which will probably shape his performance his perception way more than it should going forward. The COVID hangover type of stuff and Carson Wentz, I'm only going to speculate on that only as to say, maybe we shouldn't be speculating so much on what's going on there. We've got very few players who have been cleared within a week and come back to play. So I'm not going to build too much into that. I don't know if you have opinion on that or anything else for this game.
Yeah, not a ton, right? I do think, like you said, dealing with a really small sample size, at least from the COVID perspective. But I think, maybe at the quarterback position, I think it would probably be less of a concern than other spots.
I think so.
But yeah,
it was one of those weird. Like last season when Cam stunk post COVID, it's like, does he have COVID fog or whatever? It's like a lot of guys, he has Cam, like he has Cam fog that just ends up clouding his perceptions a lot of the time. So again, I would just say, Wentz said it didn't bother him. Tyreek Hill said that he was winded. It's like, some guys are going to be bothered, some guys are going to be less bothered. It's just kind of the way it goes. All right. Philadelphia Eagles at Washington Football Team. Philadelphia closes a 6-point favorite. They win 2016. I had it 22-15, so a little bit wider there. Hurts bandwagon is back, especially after the Hurts bandwagon literally crashed and almost crashed on top of him as he was getting off of the field. So everyone saw cool under pressure there from Jalen Hurts. And I watched a decent amount at the beginning of this game. I felt like they were kind of unlucky, and the football team was getting lucky to stay in this one as much as they were early. So Hurts wasn't great, but again, he's had a couple performances. I think he was better in this week than he was last week, where a bunch of people were jumping on the Hurts bandwagon last week and he was kind of meh. This one, I felt like he was pretty good. 0 turnover-worthy plays, only took 1 sack, had a 74 grade, 0.4 EPA per play. Like, he played solid in this one. And Sirianni, I'm not sure what to think of the guy, but again, they went for it with 1 or 2 yards to go, and they converted those, and they failed from the 24-yard line. But again, net they gain probably more than 10% in win probability in all these different types of plays. And that's a good thing that they're going to have to do going forward. And Taylor Heineke and the Washington football team is officially, it's kind of that they've really swung back and forth this season in perceptions going on them. Any thoughts on the Eagles and maybe their playoff chances is probably the most interesting thing here. I don't really know. I mean, they have a decent front. So if they can get pressure on opposing quarterbacks and then grind out games on the ground, I do think that they can upset a team or two, but they definitely have lower upside and are probably one of the teams that people would prefer to play here of the choices available.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously Jalen Hurts has been, way better than what I think Philadelphia fans would have expected here in 2021. I do think he is a piece that they can build around. I just don't think that they have those pieces necessarily in place to really be successful here in the 2021 playoffs. So I agree. I do think that they are definitely a team that people are going to want to play. I think they, a lot of teams think they match up well against the Philadelphia Eagles. They don't really have, the big time play capabilities, or at least they haven't shown it whatsoever here really in 2021. So grinding out a victory in the playoffs, maybe they can do one, but it's definitely the team that you just don't see getting at all hot enough to actually rattle off 4 straight victories. So definitely think they're a good match for a lot of teams in the NFC, and I think they'll be definitely one and done here with a lot to build on heading into 2022.
Yeah. I mean, the Jalen Hurts, is he or is he not the guy conversation has been a week by week discussion. I think, the Eagles, if you're smart, you're maybe opportunistic even looking at quarterbacks, because as part of the rationale for why I thought Hurts was a good pick is unless you have that guy, I would never shut that door. I would never shut that door, but you should be very, very happy with what you do have, because when we're talking about like these guys who are available, whether it's Kirk Cousins or Jimmy Garoppolo or, what do you do with Baker Mayfield? Like, I don't know, I might have Hurts rather than all these guys. At least you kind of know what you're getting a bit there. I'm not saying you definitely would want him versus like a Kirk Cousins, but especially considering contract, I'm not against that.
Right. I think Hurts is has one of like the best floors in the NFL, I'd say, from the quarterback position, right? So if you have the team to actually be successful around Hurts, I think he is like your ideal quarterback in a situation like the Indianapolis Colts or something, right? Like I do think you definitely want him over a guy like Jalen Hurts. So in a lot of those situations, I do think you can get potentially the right string of games together to actually win 4 playoff games with a guy like Jalen Hurts. I just think he needs a little bit more around him, and he has the offensive line, a little bit along the defensive front. It's just the secondary, and I would say secondary receiver that they really need to actually hit on, especially. But in a lot of ways, like I could see them making a pretty significant jump a la the Cincinnati Bengals if they do kind of have an answer there at the wide receiver position. Of course, there's nobody like Jamar Chase in the draft here coming up in 2022, but I do think that there are definitely some pieces that could be put in place for the Eagles to definitely be a contender here in the NFC going forward.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas Goedert has ended up being a pretty good secondary option there at tight end that a lot of people don't have, so that's helps. But yeah, the beyond Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor, that's a disaster. Okay, let's move on here to the Bucs at the New York Jets. The Bucs were 14-point favorites. They win by 4 points on a last second-ish sort of touchdown drive from Tom Brady, 28-24. My numbers had them being right around there, 26-21, the Bucs being a better team. It's kind of funny to me that Brady is like been completely eliminated from the MVP conversation, despite the fact that he's been killing these last couple of games. I mean, he's having strong games. You have no Chris Godwin. You have Antonio Brown, stripping down and getting off the field. I mean, again, it's like we don't become. It's like it was like with the COVID speculation. You don't want to become clinical psychologists here with Antonio Brown. But my thing when it comes to Brown, maybe we'll touch on Brown a little bit first here, get this out of the way, is that like he refused to play for the Steelers in week 17 when they needed him, right? It's not everyone's saying, well, the other stuff was off the field stuff that he was doing. And I just feel like in this sort of game, okay, maybe I'm galaxy braining this a little bit here, but again, I never would have signed him in the first place. But like, if you're willing to deal with everything you had for him, like maybe they actually kind of need him for the playoffs. Like maybe you would even say, hey, you know what, misunderstanding. Trust me, Brady would take him back. Brady would take him back in a second, right? He might sneak him in. He might sneak him into the game somehow, like in
Cyrus
TB12. His TB12, like he'll bring in TB12 supplement wagon or something, and then sneak Antonio Brown in the back there. because they might actually need him going forward.
I think they definitely need him going forward. And I do think that is, really concerning takeaway from the Buccaneers, especially in this particular game, right? Like they're going to be relying on Rob Gronkowski way too much here in the playoffs to actually get some separation downfield. And that's just not a likely matchup that he's going to continue to win. Obviously, he has been somewhat successful here in 2021, but at some point the wheels are going to fall off for Gronkowski. And then it's really just Mike Evans, who I don't necessarily think plays in the same manner that Brady has been successful in the past, right? Like he's kind of more this deep ball, contested catch sort of guy in a lot of situations. Brady needs somebody that can get separation underneath. Antonio Brown obviously provided that, and they don't really have that question answered here as we head into the playoffs. So I do think it's definitely concerning. They are a team that is definitely wounded here, and I think they could easily be, bounced from playoffs here relatively quickly.
Yeah. I mean, like, okay, Brady is a great
right
out of quarterback, right? So he can elevate guys a lot, but I think it's still fair to say, like, if you look at how much he's won throughout his career, he's probably is kind of like one of the luckiest quarterbacks. You could be lucky, like to have that, to be that successful, you have to have some combination of luck and some combination of being great there. Okay, if he wins a Super Bowl this year, okay, without the number 1 seed, without Chris Godwin, Levante David is on IR. I don't know when he's coming back for sure there. With Mike Evans and Rob Gronkowski, who in any like 4-game sample should each miss like a game because that's them. With Cyril Grayson and the Tyler Johnson and Jalen Vaughn, and the ghost of Le'Veon Bell running around, shake it out there, like getting 0 yards after contact and shaking out there. If he wins a championship this year, then he sold his soul to the devil. Okay, like there has definitely been something that's going on here. This is going to be a rough road for the Bucs, and I was one of those people who thought they were the best team in the NFL, but now with all this happening, man, it's tough. It's tough to really give them that great of a chance of getting out of the NFC.
Right. Yeah. I think, the Packers are a better team. I do think the Cowboys and a lot of outcomes, especially if they're playing toward their ceiling, are probably going to wipe the floor with the Buccaneers. So yeah, they're a team that I'm not buying into heading into the playoffs. I can definitely say that much here, but I think we're missing and glossing over the real point of this game. This was Zach Wilson's second best PFF passing grade of the 2021 season. So I think he's officially arrived as a legitimate quarterback in the NFL. 69.5 PFF passing grade, right below average. Just things you love to see headed into 2022.
Oh yeah. This is all about confirming your priors here. And if you like Zach Wilson going into the season, which I did, I wasn't super high on him, but I become, I get caught up in my contrarianism sometimes. I become higher and higher on him as people start to attack him. Then I'm just going to ignore everything that happened before this game. And I watched this one and he looked good. He looked good to me. Now maybe he was getting the ball out on time, about 2.6 time to throw. Like you said, 70 grade in this one. He only had above a 65 passing grade once in his first 7 starts, and now 4 out of the last 5 starts he's had above a 65 passing grade. So there is something to build on. Now, Darnold did give some of these flashes. His rookie season in particular, I think Darnold was something like the best graded quarterback the last 6 weeks of the season. But what I'll say the difference between Wilson and Darnold is that Darnold always, to me, played like a quarterback who had more talent than he really did. Like he would try to make plays where he wasn't quite fast enough and he wasn't quite quick enough. He didn't quite have a good enough arm to make plays. I think Wilson legitimately has an elite arm, legitimately has like elite pocket movement when he's avoiding guys. He avoided guys a lot and can juke guys in the pocket. He doesn't necessarily run down the field that much, although he had that huge touchdown run last week. But he does have those elite traits. So at least he has that going forward, more so than even someone like Tua last year, where you're wondering whether or not the Dolphins should look at a quarterback. I think part of it is like you start to get a better idea of how the traits are going to translate on the next level. Because even Burrow, like his rookie season, he doesn't have a great arm, but you saw him make plays with his legs. You saw him anticipate and do things like that where he can make up for that sort of stuff. So, yeah. So RIP to friend of the pod, Ben Solak over at The Ringer, who turned around Zach Wilson's season by trashing him.
Right,
and also, condolences to the Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence apologencia out there, because they were pretty much low on Zach Wilson. So you hate to see it, but that's the way it goes. One other thing, Boomer, this is another thing that's going to hold down the Bucs going forward is, the Bucs, like, Jesus, they just give up like all kinds of plays, all kinds of win probability. They, what was it? I think it was a field goal attempt on 4th and 6, down 7 at one point, another one 4th and 4. Actually, they went for it on 4th and 4. So they picked up some win probability there, but then they kicked it another time. So just yikes. And then the Jets play at the end of the game where it was a sneak on 4th and 2, which set up the possibility for the Bucs to come back. I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Why are you doing that? But then Saleh explained after the game, again, there's a little bit of bus throwing underness, it seemed like, of maybe Mike LaFleur on this one, because he was saying that was it was a play where it was designed for a jet sweep type of play to Berrios, which would really look like it would have been successful. He probably would have scored a touchdown on that play. Right. Where Zach Wilson had the option of sneaking it if he thought it was available. And his point after the game was like, maybe Mike should have, he didn't say this explicitly, but he was like, maybe they should have, imparted on Zach a little bit more of like, yeah, you have the option, but don't take that option. Right. Don't take that. In this particular situation, 2 yards to go, don't take that option. So it sounds like Zach may have actually made the mistake of sneaking in that situation, but Saleh was like, he shouldn't have made that. But I think overall for the Jets, like, this is a pretty good outcome for them. Lose the game, stay in contention for the number 3 pick. And Zach Wilson looks good, right? I feel like they, again, is another team that can build going into next year, because things were looking kind of dark for them, and Jets fans had already given up on everything, on life, basically a couple weeks ago.
Right. I mean, they've done it before. They probably give up again, but at least they have hope for 1 week, right? So
yeah, they have hope. They have hope for 1 week, and that's especially if you watch Trevor Lawrence play, then you feel a little bit better.
You feel better about that, yeah.
Having Zach Wilson here. Okay, let's hit another sponsor. Let's hit DraftKings. You want to make some dough. We've got the final week of the pro regular season coming up. College football is heading into the national championship. DraftKings Sportsbook has an unbelievable offer to get fans all in on all the exciting action in the football calendar. New customers can bet just $5 on any football team to win their game. And if they do, you win $200 in free bets. So let's wind down the season with a big win. If the sportsbook is not available in your state, you can still find your way to the winner's circle. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings daily fantasy football contest. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. Bet just $5 on any football team, college or pro, and win $200 in free bets if they're victorious. That's promo code PFF this week at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, and Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit and $1 wagered. 1 per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And last here, Western and Southern want a chance to win the ultimate game day feast, whether it's football success or financial savvy. Winning starts with asking us questions. Would you like to know what it's like behind the scenes with Al on Sunday Night Football? How about a need to know for your financial future? Western and Southern is teaming up with PFF's very own Chris Collinsworth to share insights that can help put you ahead on both your fantasy and financial scoreboards. Every submission earns you a chance to win the ultimate feast to celebrate football's favorite Sunday. We'll cover your catering up to $2,500, coordinate your order from a restaurant near you, and have it delivered on February 13th, 2022. And don't forget to check out Chris Collinsworth podcast and Western and Southern's Instagram for answers to the best questions each week. Submit your questions at westernsouthern.com/askchris. One more time, that's westernsouthern.com/askchris. If you're watching on YouTube, check out the link in the description below. Remember, with Western and Southern, you can rest assured on game day. All right. Okay, this one we could get through pretty quickly here. Although, again, playoff implications in this one, shockingly. Panthers at Saints. Saints, 6.5-point favorite. They win 18-10 in a snoozer. I did not watch much of this one. My adjusted score, 16-12, so a little bit more narrow, though not a big deal here. It's weird that we're talking about the Saints here as a potential playoff team because no one really cares about them.
Right.
But they're probably like a 30% chance of getting in this. They need to win at the Falcons, and they need the Rams to beat the 49ers. So not like 2 probable events. Now, when you combine 2 probable events, it's still improbable, but it's better than having that was analytics there. That was analytics 101, but it's still better than 2 improbable events that need to happen here. Both teams had a 32% success rate, so it was a bunch of yuck there. And Sam Darnold not closing out the season in style here. 38.5 grade, negative 0.36 EPA per play. And, Panthers and Giants are just in a tailspin right here. Joe Judge and Matt Rule are competing on a week-by-week basis for who has the least credulous case for the fact that things are really turning around for their franchises.
Right. Yeah. I don't have much to say about the Carolina Panthers, unfortunately. I don't really like the New Orleans Saints either. I do think a lot of teams are obviously wanting to play them in the NFC playoffs as well. Sam Darnold, thankfully, my one takeaway from this game, Sam Darnold, I think cashed me my first ever under 0.5 passing touchdown bet. So shout out to him. Definitely appreciate it. Thank you for the 38.5
What sort of odds do you get on that? What sort of odds?
I was like plus 175. It was great, but it was edgier.
Well, I knew it'd have to be plus. Seat. I mean, less than if you. I mean, that's like unless it's Trevor Lawrence, then it's like minus 1,000 on something. Although he did get a passing touchdown.
He did get a passing touchdown this week.
I was so disappointed by that. Yeah. I mean, I think we definitely want the 49ers in the playoffs and not the Saints. So hopefully that will happen. Although the Saints have always been one of those teams I thought has been undervalued. So they have a little bit of a spot in my heart. Okay. Jacksonville Jaguars at New England Patriots. Patriots closed as 17.5-point favorites. That was actually moving up. Supposedly some big money came in on the Patriots at 16.5, I think, is what I read on the Twitter bot. They put up a 50 burger, 50-10, and it was 49-7. So it was almost bad. Like the fact that the adjusted score is that bad, and the adjusted score is like downweighting these outlier plays. So the fact that the Jaguars were worse according to the adjusted score, and the Patriots were almost as good. The Patriots had a 67% success rate. That was the highest single game success rate since 2018, and they were running the ball 50% of the time, and they were still hitting that mark. So that just shows you how good they were. And the Jaguars defense have been the only thing that had looked not god awful this season. Mac Jones, it's kind of like the Brady situation with MVP, the Mac Jones situation now with offensive rookie of the year, is that he had the highest EPA and the highest EPA per play and the highest PFF grade this week, yet Jamar Chase just went nuclear. So it did not matter at all for his chances, and he's still falling out of there. So Trevor Lawrence, we talked about him a little bit, hinted at that. So now he's lost to Davis Mills, Zach Wilson, and Mac Jones, other rookies. He had 3 interceptions, and 2 of them were his fault, but he also had another dropped interception. And again, he scored that touchdown, which really made me upset because friend of the show, although Michael David Smith, MDS, as I like to call him, of Pro Football Talk, although he hasn't been on the show, so maybe I shouldn't call him friend of the show. Friend of mine on Twitter. He tweeted before the game. This is why I really did not want to see a touchdown pass here. If he did not throw a touchdown pass, then he would have been the 3rd QB in NFL history to start 16 games in a season and throw fewer than 10 touchdown passes. The others were Trent Dilfer in 1995 and David Carr in 2002, but he did throw a touchdown pass, and he got to 10 touchdowns with 18 interceptions this season. And it was a screen pass. It was a 30-yard freaking running back screen pass to Dare Ogugwabale or whatever his name is. I was so annoyed.
I'm sorry that happened to you, Kevin. I mean, I do think, I would have liked.
I'm hating big time here. So yeah,
that's pretty good company at least to be in, right? I mean, Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. David Carr, I mean, his brother's pretty good, I guess. So maybe there's a good outcome.
So maybe there's a younger Lawrence out there
that could be even better. I know there's an older Lawrence that's like, pretty good painter or something like that. So maybe. The guy looks like you could get a secondhand high just being near him, like somehow the older Lawrence. So yeah, David Carr, nice job at NFL Network, which I think, what's weird is I was down in Florida last week, and there are like Trevor Lawrence Subway commercials on all the time that I'd never seen before, talking about it. Like he's like talking about his hair, and like we're interrupting my hair commercial to talk about Subway or something. It's like this weird sort of thing that's going on there. So the guy's got a future beyond football, probably, like David Carr. David Carr, very, very good looking gentleman. And Trevor Lawrence and that hair, I'm sure he can find his way on. I don't know if the long hair would work on the set, but maybe we'll see. He could get a haircut. So
he could get a haircut. That's true. So the Patriots are basically locked in to the wild card now. They need to win in Miami and have the Bills lose at home to the Jets. So they need those 2 things to happen for them to win the division. We'll see if they can make some noise in the playoffs. I mean, it's weird how I felt like I was going to have to be battling Patriots lovers and people have kind of fallen off of them after that loss to the Bills. So things can swing around pretty quickly. What do you think about the Patriots' chances for a Super Bowl run here? Anything?
I'm still, I mean, obviously,
if we get Belichick Brady Super Bowl, I'm going to protest.
I've been low on protesting. Yeah. I've been low on them all season. I'm not gonna like overreact to this performance or anything else. I do still think they're somewhat of a vulnerable team in the AFC. Of course, I think the AFC in general is probably down a little bit this year, but I just don't see them beating a team like Kansas City. I don't see them beating a team like Buffalo. So I think it's gonna be one playoff win. And then a loss there in the division round is kind of my expectation. So
yeah. I mean, I definitely prefer the Bills, prefer the Chiefs, even prefer the Titans, prefer the Chargers. Okay, I pretty much prefer anyone to move on other than them.
Right.
Maybe the Raiders. I don't need to see the Raiders in the playoffs, so I'll give you that. Okay, so let's go to the Titans. This is a game I did not expect this outcome here. Titans. The Titan, what do you call Titans fans anyway? Like the Titan, do they have anything like the Steel? Those like
I don't know. I'm gonna have to go to a game
or Raider Nation, like Titan Up, the Titan Uppers,
Vrabel's volume producers or something. I don't know.
Vrabel's penis sacrificers.
Whoa!
Or whatever. Yeah, remember he said he would let someone cut off his wag
for one Super Bowl or something like that.
Yeah, for a Super Bowl. So yeah, that was kind of out of left field there, but there was context. Okay, so the Miami Dolphins at the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee only 3-point favorites in this one at home, which I pointed to as part of the reason for why they were maybe an overvalued team is because they were only a 3-point favorite at home against Miami, and they stuffed it straight in my face here. They owned me 34-3, a little bit closer in the adjusted score, 26-12, so a little bit more narrow of a victory, but still healthy victory. You know, not a great success rate, only a 36% success rate for Tennessee. And I think that's really the story of this game. The Dolphins are forked, 30% success rate. Tua was awful. So maybe I'm probably going to throw the Dolphins into my offseason series here on what these guys are going to do, because a lot of questions there. Obviously, there's been a Deshaun Watson talk, but they don't have their first round pick, and there's everything else that's going on there. But I think maybe the underlying story here, and again, sorry to go negative on your Titans. I mean, you guys really helped your Super Bowl chances by getting that number 1 seed, probably with the victory over the Texans, who beat you last time.
Right.
But 36% success rate. I mean, they still didn't really do that much offensively, honestly. And it wasn't like as impressive of a victory as the final score. But defensively, it's been good. So maybe that's what you have to hang your hat on here, because I'm not sure, even if Derrick Henry comes back from that Jones fracture, which is a treacherous injury to come back from, whether it's really going to necessarily snap the offense into being a top 10 type of offense.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think the performance last week in San Francisco was much better from an offensive output perspective, especially with AJ Brown being heavily involved. This one I didn't watch too much of, but yeah, strong defensive performance. I don't really think. Hopefully, they don't go back to just featuring Derrick Henry if he does come back from injury here in the NFC or AFC playoffs. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm not sure quite what to make Miami Dolphins or Tua in general here as we head into 2022. I don't know what they can actually do to probably turn this organization around.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is one of these like small sample sort of things, but that Jones fracture, which is actually, I've actually had a Jones fracture, believe it or not. It's like the end of the, it doesn't heal well. It's the very end of what they call the 5th metatarsal. So on the side of the foot, it's a little piece of bone that kind of sticks off on the bottom part there. So again, lots of people break this. Normally, no one's coming back in the same season from it, because the risk of re-injury is pretty high. It's a slow healing thing because you don't get a lot of blood flow in that area. The extremely small sample, because the only person I can remember coming back is Des Bryant tried to come back, and he just looked like trash when he came back. I'm not sure if he ever even looked like the same player again, quite honestly, after he came back from that. So I'd be a little hesitant to think that Derrick Henry should necessarily come back, because honestly, like Dante Foreman looked okay, and they're running the ball okay. It's really still the passing game that has not been coming around for them. Okay, so Vrabel Coach of the Year. I know that you're like Zach. You have your take, your Zach Taylor tweet that you have to stick behind here, but I can't see. I feel like Vegas and these odds, not Vegas, I should say, but the betting odds in these different places, I feel like they're probably least accurate being able to predict what's going to happen on Coach of the Year, because the the rubric for how you're measuring these coaches, like there is no rubric. I think the rubric for measuring these coaches is like, you look at the results, you look at the team, and then you're like, how the hell did that happen? I guess we must be the coach because we don't know what the coach is doing. So I think the Titans have a pretty good case. I think Vrabel may be a little bit undervalued in some of these markets because you look at them clinching the number 1 seed next week, which is very likely against the Texans. I think that's going to be a really good case of the injuries, the Henry injury being overweighted, right? The impact of that, and people saying, how the hell did that happen? Let's give Mike Vrabel some love here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, outside of Zach Taylor, I do think Vrabel's probably should be number 2. I would give him more credit than a guy like Bill Belichick in a lot of ways. So the odds don't make a ton of sense. And I do agree with you, at least handicapping some of these markets. And it's the same thing with MVP, right? It's I
think MVP is a little bit more clear. It's been very attached to EPA per plays, despite the fact that everyone likes to think MVP is a narrative award. I don't think it is. I mean, Coach of the Year, I believe, is definitely a narrative award. Although it has been very closely linked to wins over preseason expectations. So that is part of it.
Right.
And that would be Zach Taylor.
Maybe I try to lump all those awards into like the one category. So I just don't focus a ton of time or energy on it. But I do agree with you. I do think probably if you're choosing one, it is MVP. Probably makes the most sense, at least from a modeling perspective. But there's a lot of outside factors as well that we're just not fully taken into account.
So now we have Zach Taylor plus 150, LaFleur, this is a DraftKings, plus 175, and Vrabel plus 350. I mean, if I'm going to pick one of those, Belichick's all the way at 2,000. He fell off a cliff. So, I mean, maybe I'd throw something on Belichick just for if he could get some boomer votes and then end up getting in there. But Vrabel's he's pretty boomer friendly, I would say.
He is boomer friendly. He is.
I think some guys definitely like him. So that has a chance there too. Vrabel will probably be my best risk reward bet in that circumstance. Okay. Rams at Baltimore Ravens. Rams 7-point favorites. And they win by a single point, 20-19. My adjusted score is much wider, 29-21. Stafford. Okay, so there's a couple different narratives coming out of this one. One, people are pretty low on Stafford and they can't win with him because of the up and downs here. He, had the pick 6. He tossed one into long double, triple coverage to OBJ. Because OBJ demands that you do that. Obviously, we know that from he demands that you throw awful picks to him. But then OBJ made a couple of big late plays with the 4th down conversion and then a touchdown to get ahead. And then Von Miller, first time I think I've heard his name called since he's come to the Rams, made a sack to end the game there. So the two things coming out of this: one, Stafford can't win. But I think he's still second in EPA per play this year. So I think I'm definitely higher. I was definitely higher on the Rams coming into this game because I had them as being marginally better than the Packers. So I'd probably flip the Packers just in my own personal adjustment above them. But I still had them being a top 5-ish sort of team. People seem to be pretty down on Stafford because of all these turnover-worthy plays. I think he's had something like 18 turnover-worthy plays in the second half of the season. But do we trust the larger full season sample size a little bit more and say that he still has been the second most efficient quarterback in the NFL on a per play basis?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that you do obviously need to trust the full sample size of things, but there is this other element of people wanting to rail on Sean McVay for being, first half of the season sort of guru from an offensive scheme perspective, and then that thing kind of gets figured out basically.
But why would that happen? That's what I always wonder about this. Give me a credible reason. He's not coming up with new shit every year, right? What would be the credible reason?
I think there's wrinkles basically that are added for sure in the offseason that can be somewhat successful early on.
Why would he be different? Why would he be any different than any other coach? I don't know. I remember
that's such a unique scheme that it takes some time for defenses to basically get film on or something. I don't know. I mean, I've heard the narrative.
It's possible. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's possible. It reminds me a little bit of my favorite split that people used to hang their hat on. Actually, it was Joe Goodberry. He was a friend of the show here.
Everybody's a friend of the show. Right?
Everybody's a friend. Actually, he hasn't been on the show either, but he's a friend of mine. So I feel bad burying him on this one, but because I think this was really his thing as a Bengals guy. But it was Andy Dalton, and it was common opponents. So the second time he played the same team within a 12-month time span, he was really, really bad. So the theory was they like figured him out. And I was just like, why would Andy Dalton be any worse than anyone else? Like, what would be so unique about him that you would figure him out? And of course, like the moment that became popularized, he started like crushing in these second combat opponents here. So I'm not saying it's on that level. It's not on that level of weird splittedness, but what do you think? What do you like? I don't know. I don't know if I'm buying it, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it is tough to kind of like break out those sorts of things. And then obviously you can find splits and other trends to back up any point. So I do agree with you. I mean,
well, at least there's a timeout. At least there is a timeout to this one. So we have seen it, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, there was, Boomer. There was a nice Boomer call though here on 4th down from McVay. They had the ball 4th and 2 down 10-0 at their own 47-yard line. And this was in the second quarter with 2 minutes to go, and they punted the ball. 7.4% win probability, according to Ben Baldwin, friend of the show. Ben, I have to throw that out there now every time. Right. Ben Baldwin's bot on that one. So again, McVay is going to continue to do that. Okay, the second. I'm going back to my natural instincts as a hater here on this one. The second narrative coming out of this is like Tyler Huntley is an NFL starting quarterback, or should be considered to potentially be an NFL starting quarterback. I mean, I like the guy, UDFA, but is anyone really going to go like? I don't think he's going to get traded anyway because they're going to keep him as a backup. But even if they could, like, would anyone want to go all in on a kind of low upside Lamar Jackson? I mean, he has a 65 passing grade this season. He has 3 touchdown passes in 4 starts. 3 interceptions. He has only 2 big time throws in 4 starts with 6 turnover worthy plays. And he's taken 15 sacks in his 4 starts. Right. His EPA is basically flat on 200 dropbacks. And he's a UDFA, which I think is important for our priors. Although people are like, hey, I had Tyler Huntley as my number 3 quarterback in the class, whatever bullshit's coming out there now. But sorry, that might be you. So I should be saying
it was not me. I mean, I do think he actually did kind of well from like the text analytics perspective in a lot of ways from things that we did with the draft, kind of similar to what Jalen Hurts did. So I think from that perspective, I was a little bit higher on him. I at least expected him to get drafted. He did not, but I agree with you. I don't think anybody's really going to be moving toward making him their starting quarterback. I think obviously we would have seen him get drafted if that was the case. And I do think that there's still this idea of people not really wanting to shift to the style of offense that's really going to allow him to be actually successful in a lot of ways. Yeah. You need almost somebody, and this is kind of why it works for Baltimore, because they already have Lamar Jackson. So Tyler Huntley can be successful in this offense. They don't necessarily have to change anything in order for them to kind of play in the manner that they do. But I just don't see another team potentially shifting their offense to potentially, play from that perspective. So I don't think he's going to be a starter here anytime soon. In the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good story, but let's cool our jets on that one a little bit there. Okay, let's get through these last few games here. Texans at San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco closed as a 13.5-point favorite. It was 15. Then Jimmy G went out. It went down to 12. That's where I mentioned best bet there. I was still going to go with them at -12. So we'll take the process. Is it kind of a process L, but we'll take the win on this one because the adjusted score is only 18-12 on this one. They were kind of lucky in a way to get the cover. It was 7-3 Texans at halftime. It was 10-7 Texans at the end of the third quarter. Texans only it was 10-7 San Francisco at the end of the third quarter. The Texans only averaged 3.8 yards per play, but they converted a handful of third downs to play early. Lance, I think he looked a little scattered, but he at least pushed the ball down the field. He had a 12 ADOT, but 3.3 seconds on his time to throw versus 2.6 seconds for Jimmy Garoppolo this season. But again, 12 ADOT versus 7.6 for Garoppolo. So quite a big difference. And I think really the reason Lance was able to perform well in this game, which may not happen going forward, was that he was only pressured 3 times on his 26 dropbacks, despite holding the ball that long. Any takeaways for this one? I mean, San Francisco has about a 65% chance to get in because, again, they need only one of 2 probable things to happen. Well, it's one of 2 things to happen. They need to beat the Rams or the Falcons beat the Saints.
Right. Yeah. I think the Falcons are going to beat the Saints. So I do think we're going to see the 49ers in the playoffs no matter what happens. Obviously it was exciting to see Trey Lance play a little bit here. Like you said, I think some good and some bad definitely. But we'll see what happens here in week 18 and who's actually going to be starting. We'll see.
So. I know there's going to be some takes out there that they should like turn to Trey Lance instead of Jimmy Garoppolo for the playoffs.
More upside. So
no, they can't do that, right?
I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to do that. No.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do it either. I think Lance like displayed enough to say like maybe he's got a future, and he also displayed enough, again, holding the ball, not being very successful on a play-by-play basis. He had some big plays to say like you is not ready for that yet.
Right.
Okay. Broncos at Chargers. Chargers 7.5 point favorites. They win 34-13. At a more narrow at 21-10. It was a game of late downs and special teams. There was a kick return touchdown for the Chargers, a muffed punt that they recovered. Similar success rates, honestly, and not really any big mistakes on either side. But the Broncos, awful on late downs. They even completed a pass on 4th and 2 from 2 yards from scoring and didn't get a touchdown on it. Completed a pass to Drew Lock on that one. So they lost a ton of expected points on late downs. The Chargers gained a ton. And my only question in this one is, has big field goal gotten to Brandon Staley? Because we had another situation here, 4th and 1 from the 1 yard line, up 7-0, where they kicked a field goal here rather than stuffing it in.
Yeah, I mean,
big field goal.
You love big field goal. I mean, he's trying to appease the the haters, basically the 4th down decision gurus and those sorts of things.
I mean, maybe you could, if you like, I feel like Staley is using a little bit more of a mental model than quote unquote analytics people give credit for it than we think. And I think on this one he might have been saying, well, we're playing Drew Lock and the Broncos, so therefore, like, I don't need to press my luck here. When in reality is, like, when you're at the 1 yard line, it doesn't matter who you're playing or what the underlying dynamics of the game are, or everything else. Plus, they're only 7.5 point favorites, so they're not that big of a favorite here. All right, let's again, Chargers. We want to see them, I think, beat the Raiders next week.
Pull it off for us
and get and get into the playoffs and have Herbert play there as playing like a top 5 guy. All right, last game, and not a lot to say here, but the Lions and at the Seahawks. The Seahawks were 9 point favorites. Another second 50 burger of the week, 51-29. Adjusted score 41-26. It was kind of a vintage Russ game, 82 grade, half an EPA per play. Got DK Metcalf back in there. A lot of smiles here. I think I'm definitely going to discuss the Seahawks on one of the future Friday pods about what they're going to do going forward. Do we care about anything that happened in this game? Does it have any implications for Russ staying, Russ going, anything like that? Or is it just like, at least he showed that he's not awful?
Yeah, he showed that he's not awful. Boost his trade market value. He's still going to be out of here in 2022, in my opinion. So
yeah, I think so too. It's a weird situation that has really come to that, but I mean, it is a little bit hard optically, and I'll talk about this more. We've talked about this even before, of like not having a first round pick, but you've got to get like a good first round pick in this draft to potentially have here. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, listening to it all here again. I'll be back on Friday. Make sure you turn into that. I will probably break down the Browns more than anything else. I will discuss best bets, which we had a 3-0 week.
Browsing
for me, the best bets.
Sure.
So, it's all about, paying for those Christmas presents there.
Yes.
And of course, it's for entertainment purposes only, everyone. And then I'll discuss with Ben. We'll either get him on Friday to discuss his stuff, or I'll relay it to you on the pod. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll be talking at you in a few days.